So today what we'll be doing is we're going to be looking at a few ways to optimize your face-to-face client meetings with KITS. So Julie will now brief you on what we'll be covering.
So we're going to be going over those key skills to help you close sales quickly, also taking a deeper look into some of our kit's basic features, how they work and how they can help you out, and also improving your scene builder skills. So Franklin, let's get started.
All right, great. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to pop open into KITS. There we are. So what we're actually going to be doing is we're going to be looking at, for this webinar series, is to be going through it. This is actually going to be the first of a short series that we're going to run, where what we really want to do is look at the key skills that you need to improve when you're client-facing. All right, so we all know that KITS is a great tool to help facilitate what you want to do and what you want to do create with your client. So what we want to do is we want to get you up to that confident level where you feel comfortable enough to be using the tool as you're going through the client meeting. All right, so knowing what works best for you and having the confidence in using the tool to finding a solution for your client and for your client's needs will ultimately help you close that sale quickly. All right, so let's go ahead and begin with the first part of the segment. So what we're going to be doing is, again, we're going to be looking at a key factor. And that number one key factor for me is product knowledge. Here, I always like to say product knowledge is king, or queen if you prefer. And again, that really depends on the manufacturer that you're using. So I'm going to first go ahead and create a project. And what I mean about product knowledge being king or queen, it's really important to show your client really your product know-how, especially when you're working on having to find solutions for many of the questions and many of the project issues that they have. All right, so one thing I always like to say about KITS is, not only is it a tool that can help you, during your sale, but it's a tool that you can actually utilize when you're learning product. Okay, so I'm just going to go and tap on the Add Item button. I'm going to quickly go into HAN. Today I'm going to go ahead and use HAN as my example. Here I'm going to go into HAN seating. I'm going to go into steel seating. And you can see as I'm actually drilling through the drop-down menu, you can see that on the right-hand side in the thumbnail gallery, you can see these images now populate. Every time I make a drill-down selection, the thumbnails will populate again. So here I'm going to go into ignition seating, and you can see once we get down to ignition seating, I have all these different submenus that I can go through. I'm going to go into task chairs, and you can see all these different task chairs that I have available to me. All right, so this is a great way of learning product, because what you can do is you can actually take a look and start to reference these model numbers and start to place them with actual images. All right, and when you start to do that, then you can start to populate your project with those graphics, and then you can begin to see what actually happens when you make changes to that particular product. All right, so it's a great way of using the tool to learning more about product. I mean, with chairs, it's a little bit more simplified because you get one graphic, but if you're not too comfortable with building layouts, let's say work surfaces with legs, there's all these different resources that the manufacturers provide that can actually show you how some of these items go together. The idea here is that what you want to do is you want to find a quick solution for your client. You don't necessarily have to have all the guts of the actual layout in place. What you could have is basically an ideation of what they expect and create that as the graphic. So it could be work surfaces that could be possibly powered. What you want to do is you want to pair those work surfaces with their legs, with the proper supports, any kind of storage requirements that are required, and make sure that you create this graphic that, again, is an idea of what the actual client is looking for. All right, because once you win the client over from there, then you can actually take it back. If you're working with a design team, you can relate this back to your design team, have them validate it, and create a proper estimation for your client. So there's all these different ways of using this tool. And again, number one thing is product knowledge. Okay. So other thing I also want to show you is regarding product knowledge is also utilizing the search function. All right. So you can see here, simply enough, I can actually go to the manufacturer's catalog. I can start drill through down that actual catalog. It's very similar to what you actually get with CAP Designer or any other spec tool that you actually use, because we use the same data set. So what we try to do is create a similar navigational hierarchy so that there's no change in how you use those spec tools as to how you use kits as a visual tool. So we want to make sure that we create that type of synergy. So again, you can drill down through the manufacturer's catalogs, or what you can do is you can utilize the search box function. Okay, and the search box function will allow you to find items much quicker, but will also allow you to, let's say, refine a search if you're not too sure exactly what the model number is. Okay, so for instance, we're going to use Han as the example again, and I'm going to go back into ignition seating. What I'm actually looking for is task seating. So here, I'm going to indicate task seating. I'm going to go ahead and tap in search. Now, if you're new to kits and this is your first time using the search box function, what you do need to understand is that this is not a Google search. What you'll have to do is you'll have to phrase your search exactly as how the manufacturer phrases their summary description or model description, right? The other thing you have to also get familiar with is the manufacturer's lingo, because we all know that manufacturers like to use different lingo. Some may spell out upholstery, some may actually just use UPH. So my suggestion to you is that if you're looking for anything in particular, like let's say upholstery or credenza, then instead of typing out the whole thing, what you want to do is you want to type out CRED. Okay? In this case, we're going to look for a task chair. Here, I've already indicated task, and what kits begins to populate is basically all the results that either have task in the model name or task in the summary description, right? So what we want to do is we want to refine this to actually getting us the least amount of results so we can actually find the product that we're actually looking for. So here, I'm going to tap on type, and you can see by default, kits already selects items and typicals as your default selection for the type filter. So what it begins to look for are all items, which are the manufacturer's catalog items, and all typicals. These are the typicals that our content creation team has created for you. Okay, we want to single out items, so I'm going to go ahead and tap on items only, and you can see how quickly that now changes my search results. Again, I have way too many to filter through, so what I want to do is I want to refine this furthermore. So here, I'm going to tap on price, and I do know that the chair is going to be anywhere between $500 and $1,500. So I'm going to leave it down to that. And again, you can see again that kits will now change the results. I want to further the search result because I do know that we're searching for a Han product. So I'm going to go into Han. And again, now what kits begins to do is it begins to look at all items that belong under Han under the price range of $500 to $1,500, as well as our only manufacturer items. Okay, we know it's seating that we want, so we're going to tap into seating and steel seating. And then lastly, I do know that I'm looking for ignition seating, so I'm going to go ahead and tap on that. And as soon as I do that, you can see how quickly the search results result in a smaller result. Okay, here I know the item number or the particular item I'm looking for is right over here. I can go ahead and double tap on that image, and then I can drag it into my scene. Okay, so that's how quickly you can actually find items using kits. So again, remember, product knowledge is king. Knowing what you're searching for is key to your success, especially when you're using this when you're client-facing. Okay, so again, just remember, folks, that you don't have to bring all the catalogs that are available to you when you go to these meetings. If you know specifically, if you can narrow down exactly what you need to use, or which manufacturer you're looking to promote, then what I would do is prior to that meeting, go through that manufacturer, understand the product, know what you need to look for, and then when you're in front of your client, you can use it with confidence. Okay. So the next part of the segment is we're going to look at some basic features. Now the basic features that I want to look at for this series are bounding boxes and the snap to and the collision prevention features. Okay, the reason why I want to look at bounding boxes, now bounding boxes, just so you know, are these blue box items that appear around any item. I'm going to go ahead and add a typical to this. Here again, we're going to use Han. I'm going to look at the workstations. And let's go ahead and bring on this one. Let's now drag it into the scene. Okay, so I have it in the scene here. I'm going to make some quick adjustments. But before I do that, let me just move this chair out. And so you can see here, I have the chair which I just added, and I have this new typical which I've just added to my scene builder. Okay, if I tap on the chair has a blue box around it. That indicates that this particular item is a single item. It's not grouped together, and I know that because it has a blue box which surrounds the actual item. All right. Now let's tap on the typical, and you can see here that the typical indicates red boxes. This actually tells me that the typical itself is actually in a grouping. Okay. If I tap on an individual item in that typical, so here we go. Let's tap on this cushion here. You can see that this cushion is actually green. Okay. The reason being is what it's indicating to me is that this particular cushion is the item that we're selected on in that grouping. Okay. There's a reason for that. I'm going to get to it in a second. What I want to do is I want to quickly edit this typical. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ungroup the typical by tapping on Ungroup at the bottom left corner. And you can now see all the items defer back to as individual items. Okay? I'm just going to quickly go into Plan View, zoom in, and let's quickly adjust the typical. Now, in case you ever work on a typical and you notice that items are slightly displaced, that's a great indicator that there's been some kind of data change, and that data change has affected where that actual item falls into place in the scene. So it may be displaced. All you need to do is ungroup it and fix it manually, and you'll be fine. Now, when you do that, what you can also do is you can contact KIT support, and you can let us know exactly the issue that you've experienced with that typical, and we'll take a look at it, and we'll see what we can do to repair it. Right? So there I fixed the typical. I also removed those chairs because I've added this new chair, and now we're going to take a look at what we have. Okay? So everything looks fine to me there. Again, what I want to do is go back to Plan View, and let's regroup this layout. Okay? So I've selected it all by using the selection tool, and now I'm going to go and group that together. Okay? So again, you can see those red boxes now appear around the actual typical. Okay? So let's go back to that question about the green box that surrounds the particular item. So you can see here that I've now selected the same cushion as the same selection before. It again has that green bounding box around it. What I want to do is I'm going to duplicate this typical just for the example. And what I want to do is I want to use the snap to function. Okay, the snap to function, you guys may all be aware, allows you to quickly build your layouts by having one item recognize a point in another item and having those two items snap together in place. Okay, normally those snap to points are created by the manufacturer, and if you're familiar with CAP Designer, you know that these insertion points or location points appear in the actual DWG, and items snap to that particular point or that insertion point. Same idea here. What we want to do is we want this cushion to recognize the corner of this cushion so that it snaps together. Okay, so here I'm going to go ahead and select this typical, and now I'm going to slowly move it closer to the other one, and you can see at some point it begins to snap. Okay, and if I zoom in, you can see that I am perfectly aligned with the corner of that actual cushion. Okay, so that's how the snap to function works. Now, why is it important to the green box? Well, as I mentioned before, that green box indicates the item that you're currently selected on in that grouping. Now, I want to do the same thing, but this time I'm actually going to select this credenza surface, and I'm going to tap so you can see that it's highlighted in green. And now I'm going to try snapping those two items together. You can see that it's not resulting the same way. The reason why is the snap to function, it works only when you're working with the particular item selected. Even though the typical is completely selected, the snap to function will only start to work around the item that is green. Okay, so that's the location points that would be indicated. This is where, again, when is it a good time to use your collision prevention? When is it good to use your snap to? Well, you know what the snap to does. If I need to use collision prevention in this case, I can switch that on, and here you can see that I can move it fairly close, but at some point, what KITS is beginning to detect is that another item, and that's this frame up here, is now touching. So it's preventing me from pushing those two items into each other. Okay, so that's the characteristic of the green box as opposed to the red box and the blue box. Now the blue box is individual, so anytime I have a blue box, you can see here that it'll snap to. Let me just turn off the collision prevention. Okay, and you can see that anytime I bring this chair close to the item, it now begins to snap to a particular part of that typical. I'm just going to remove one of these typicals here. And what I want to do is now I want to concentrate on understanding the purpose of the bounding box. Okay. Now the bounding box, whether it's blue, red, or green, we already know that shares some kind of characteristic for it to use certain features like the snap to. Okay. So here I'm just going to rotate the chair, go into plan view. I'm going to bring it over here. And just to show you, I'm going to actually move the chair so that now it comes aligned into this section here. So as I get close to the work surface, you can see that it begins to snap. Okay, and what's actually snapping to it? I can see that the caster of the wheel is at the front of the line, and that may look like it's the piece that's actually snapping to. In actuality, what KITS actually does is that snap to function refers to the bounding box that surrounds the actual item. Okay, so it's really important to understand that, because now what happens is anytime I move the chair, it's actually KITS recognizing the bounding box that's around it. It's not the actual graphic. Okay, so there's a lot of confusion with that. A lot of people come to us and say, yeah, you know what, I'm trying to create a desk layout with an overhead hutch, and every time I bring in the hutch, it's only snapping to the corner of the credenza, and it's not allowing me to place it in the middle of it, or where it would be intended to. The reason being is because it's bounding box snapping to bounding box. Okay, so that's really important for you guys to understand on how that function actually works, because we get a lot of questions about it, and it's really something that once you begin to recognize how these basic features work, then it'll definitely make building your projects much easier. Okay, so that takes care of the second part of the webinar here, understanding the bounding boxes in the snap to and collision prevention. There are other things that we can use collision prevention and snap to for, but mainly understand that the snap to function is there to help ease the process of building these layouts. Now, the other thing that you also have to remember, and this is something that I stress every time I run any kind of training seminar, or every time we talk about rendering with KITS, the client isn't going to notice, inches off the actual layout, okay? Because it's the graphic that you're creating. A lot of times, those deficiencies in the project aren't going to appear in the visual, okay? So understand that when you're creating these projects, you don't necessarily have to be precise. I say that, but I'm a hypocrite because my designer in me forces me to actually create a lot of these projects to near perfection if that's possible. But again, what I always like to do is I like to stress on the fact that especially when you're face to face, what you want to do is you want to be efficient and you want to be quick because you want that client to understand that you're the correct person for the job. You can find the solutions quickly and you can build these and you can show them every iteration of what you're actually looking to create for their scope. So, these are all things that add to the presentation value and to the confidence that you need when you're client-facing. All right. So again, what we're going to look at right now is we're going to look to improve some of our scene builder skills. And moreover, what I want to look at is the specification option structure. Okay. So that sounds a little fancy, but what that really is, here I'm going to double tap on that chair, is basically the swatch options that we have here to specify the product. Okay, so understanding what some manufacturers have, what other manufacturers don't have, and what that means to you. Okay, so we're going to go through the first option, and that's select the arm type. So Han is actually really good at this because they really pay close attention to basically how users use the information that they have for their products, how that actually looks, and all the different tools that Han is available in. So it's important that the user, that's the KITS user, gets the experience that Han wants them to experience. Okay, so here what we have is basically the swatch options for the arm type. I have an undecided, and every time I select one, you can see what it actually does is it makes a change to the graphic. Okay, depending on the type of change. For instance, if we go to this fixed arm, you can see that the graphic now changes into a fixed arm. I can go into armless. That now removes the arms. I can go to a fixed arm with a polished finish, and that now gives me a fixed arm with a polished finish. So this is what we call a visual structure, or a visual option, or some people may refer to as a structural option because it does change the way the item actually looks and also the structure of it, but also the visual of it. So some manufacturers are great at doing it. Han is a great example of using the visual option as part of their option selection process. And as a user, and especially when I'm working with a client, this is added value because what it really is it's helping me define, the visualization that I'm trying to create for my client. The closer I can get to matching what the client thinks they see in their head, the closer I'm getting to closing that sale. So if I can do that all in this one meeting, then great. I really need that tool, such as KITS, to really help me get there. Okay, so then once we have that selected, we're going to go next, and then I'm going to go into the CASR options. In case you guys are trying to follow along, you guys are the designers, you can work on yours. But every time we go through it, you can see that I'm slowly going into the selection process and choosing how I want the product to look for my client. Okay, and again, you can see here that I've selected the mesh back, and again, the graphic now indicates that mesh back. Okay, if I wanted an upholster back, I can go into the upholster back, and it'll revert back into that graphic. Okay, so I'm going to stick with going with the mesh back, and then we're going to go into the next option. And this is really important. This is the select upholstery grade level selection. What we have here is basically all the results of the swatches that are available from this manufacturer in this long swatch list here. Okay, obviously this may be a little bit too overwhelming to actually go through to select. One thing too is, as a designer, I want both the visual as well as the actual, because I have this tactile need to actually be able to feel and touch and see the material. So it's always good to be prepared, knowing what fabrics you need to show. KITS in a way was created to help eliminate the process of having to bring all these finishes, but we all know that finishes can speak 1,000 words as well, because if a client see something that they really like, they may actually gravitate to it and really kind of stick to that idea, which really helps you, figure out the solution from there. But what we've done is we've allowed you to select which upholstery grade you need to actually go through with the client. So here I'm going to go through upholstery grade 3, so I'm going to tap on grade 3, and you can see what it does is it further defines the options that are under grade 3, where I have the series NAC and Silvertex available under upholstery grade 3. Okay. Not only does it define it that way, it also changes the results here, showing me fewer results. Well, only those results that are found in upholstery grade 3. We know that upholstery grade 3 has 53 swatches available, 14 of NAC, 38 of Silvertex. Okay. Let's focus on Silvertex. So let's go tap on that, and let's look at the results. You can see there's quite a few results here. All right. Great thing is, you guys are the salespeople. You know what it takes to actually close these sales. Whenever I was working on a sale, I would always ask the client as many questions as I could within a very short period of time prior to actually making that meeting, so I can come prepared, understanding exactly what the client may be looking for. Now, that is an ideal situation. We know that clients may not know that, so it's always good to understand the project that you're working on, possibly the branding of the actual company, or what the existing furniture looks like. So these are all different things that we may have to do to prepare prior to that sale. And in this case, if I knew that the client's branding colors were, let's say, gray, blue, and red, what I could do is I can minimize the results here by choosing blue swatches, gray swatches, and also red swatches. Okay? And you can see here what KiSP begins to do is it begins to define the actual results below, indicating only Silvertex fabrics that are blue, gray, and red. Okay? What we do in the background is whenever we work with a manufacturer, we run their entire swatch selection, if it's available to us, okay? We run it through a heuristics program which recognizes the colors that are found within the actual swatch itself. Okay? That's how we're able to define our swatch selection, as well as be able to give you a filter here that you see. All right? But what this filter does is it really helps you get down to what you really need to look for. And in this case, I'm going to go ahead and pick turquoise. That doesn't really look like turquoise to me, but we're going to accept it as turquoise. And then I'm going to go tap on next. The frame is standard black. That's the reason why we don't have any options for that. Then we're going to go next again. And now we're down to the last option, which is either choosing the base is black or the base is polish. My arms are polished. Let's go with a polished base. Okay, now that that's done, I'm going to go ahead and tap on done. And you can see now how wonderful that chair looks in my scene. Okay, so that's really understanding the options when you're going through the specification options, especially when you're working with a company that has a visual option. Okay, so it's again, when I refer this back to our first part of the series, which was the product knowledge key factor. This is where it's important for you to understand what's available in terms of the actual product that you're using. Okay. Now, let's get into some more of the actual edit item menu, as well as the swatch selection here. So what I have here is a work surface that I'm working with. Okay. Now, I do know that there's a particular laminate that the client likes. I'm going to go ahead and tap on select laminate. Here you can see that I have all these options. It's actually Portico teak that they want to use, which is this one here. So I'm going to go ahead and select that. And then I'm just going to tap on close just to see what the results are. Okay. So again, you know that KiSP defines each item under its own under its own character. Here you can see that because these two items are like items, and most likely, if I go into my list view, those will most likely fall under the same line. Let me just find those work surfaces. And here we go. It's the very last one. So you can see that I know it's this group because why? I'm currently selected on one of them, so I know in the grouping one of those items is green, the other one is red. This indicates that, again, because this mirrors what's actually going on in your scene builder, we know that the current item selected is green. That's actually showing me this one here, and then the other item that's part of its grouping is red. Now, because those two work surfaces appear in the same line, anytime you make a change to one, makes a change to both. So again, if I were to make that change, you can see it only affects those two items. Okay. Now, we've been getting questions regarding, how can I quickly replace finishes on all like surfaces? We give you the option of choosing replace all. So what I'm really aiming at is improving your project creation efficiency when you're building in front of a client. So if we know that we need to speed things up and we need to get to a result, because what we really want to do is we want to get the client to a certain point where they begin to feed us a little bit more information about the project. We all know that a lot of times they're reluctant to giving us the whole scope. So what we do is we start to feed them with solutions that start to really hit points of what they're trying to achieve. When they recognize those points, a lot of times subconsciously, they'll start to relay a little bit more information about the project. Oh, you know what? Here's a layout that I want to use. It should accommodate the two people that you're looking to do. These are some of the finishes. I noticed that you have some other great furniture here. I have a laminate that works perfectly with that. Let me show you this portico teak. Once you start to show them this a little bit, they'll be like, oh, I kind of like that, but we wanted some white finishes as well. They start to divulge a little bit more information, and that's when you can start pairing that, using that the gift of salesmanship or saleswomanship. What you want to do is you want to pick up those points and you want to start adding them to the layout, because the closer you can get to what the client thinks they see, the closer you're getting to closing that sale. All right. So here, the client divulged a little bit of information that they want to keep some of the surfaces white as well. Then you can start to begin to give them a combination. So in this case, what I'm going to do is we have this laminate already selected. I'm just going to put it undecided for now. I'm going to go ahead and tap on Replace All. Let's select that portico teak, tap on Next, and you can see how quickly it begins to add it to all the like items in the scene. So I'm just making some changes as we go. Tap on Done, and there you have it. You can see how quickly I was able to put all these finishes on any like items. Now, this doesn't complete the specification of that particular item, and we know that because if we go to List View here on the right-hand side, here it actually will show me what items are specified and what items may require certain specifications. That means anything that I see with a red question mark may appear. If I don't see one, that means I've got a fully specified layout. Okay? What I want to do is, we need to show some of those white surfaces. I want to make some changes to this. I'm going to go ahead and make this into white, so I'm going to go ahead and tap on that. I'm going to go just filter out white, tap on that, and instead of doing a replace all, I know if I do that, it's probably going to replace everything. I only want to replace those two, and I do know that because the behavior of the item in the project, if I make a change to its like item, changing one changes all. So here we're going to go and tap on Done, and you can see again how quickly I made those changes to just those two particular items. Okay, again, let's take a look at this. Here, I'm going to double tap on the bottom tile. We're going to change that to a dark gray. I'm just going to pick any kind of dark gray here that I can find. Let's go with this. I'm not even going to tap on Replace All. I'm just going to tap on Done. And you can see what it does is it recognizes all the bottom tiles on that frame. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and select that as a dark blue or a bright blue, whichever one. Let's go with turquoise again since we used it in the scene. Now let's go with azure instead. Tap on Done. And again, you can see how that quickly applies. If I wanted all the panels to be of the same color, here what I would do is replace all. I would select the color that I would want to change it to, and you can see how quickly that changes all the colors. So again, it's getting familiar with what's actually available to you, especially the replace all will really help the project efficiency when you're trying to create a quick layout, and especially if you're using typicals that are pre-created, because you may have a typical that's a little bit more involved. You don't want to go through every single item. What you want to do is you want to quickly find swatches to complete the actual project, and then you can start to pick and pull from there based on what the client is feeding you. Okay, so I'm just going to revert this back to that Azure, and that back to that wonderful gray. Okay. Now that I have that all completed, let's add one more chair. Go into Plan View. And again, what I like to do is I like to use the grid lines to align how I place items. There we go. And there we have it. There's that wonderful layout. I've quickly done that within, let's say, about 20 minutes of this webinar. I mean, in between all the talking and all the showing, this probably would have taken me anywhere between 5 and 10 minutes to produce in front of my client. Okay, so there's all these little key things that you can really touch on that will help you close that project that much faster. Okay, so here I'm just gonna, I see something that I may have to complete. And, no, that looks like, oh, yeah, it's the foot color. Okay, and it results only in one standard color. All right, and that's it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to quickly render this. And whenever we're client-facing, we always want to use the first rendering option because that's going to take the least amount of time to produce a nice high-definition image. Okay, this will take anywhere between 10 to 15 seconds. And again, the more intricate you get with your actual layout, the longer it'll take to actually turn in the render. Okay. There we have it. I'm going to export that my photo library. And then I'm also going to do one quick plan view. And that will be in a line drawing, which will take a second. So just in case the client wants to see what the bird's eye layout is going to be, or the floor plan layout is going to be, or anybody working on with this project, I can give them as much information as possible so that we can really close the sale as quickly as possible. Okay, and that's done. And there you have it. There's the the first of the short series that we're going to be running in the next couple of weeks. This is really to get your confidence level up when you're working with your clients. What we want to do is we really want to show you all the different things that you need to know about kits and how everything works so that when you're in front of your client, you're working and you're using the tool with confidence.